there are some stories that do not begin with noise. They begin with silence. With an empty corner of a room that no one looks at anymore, with a water bowl that gets filled each morning, but no one stops to watch who drinks from it. With a pair of eyes, one brown, one clouded and still, watching a door that almost never opens for her. This is a story about a dog named Nova. She was not beautiful in the way people expect dogs to be beautiful. She was not bouncy or eager. She did not jump at strangers or wag her tail the moment someone walked in. She sat. She waited. She watched. One eye could see the world clearly, the other had seen too much, and now it saw nothing at all. Most people who came to the shelter walked past her. Some slowed down for a moment. Some read the small card on her kennel door. A few shook their heads softly and moved on. But one man did not move on. He was not looking for a dog. He was not even sure why he had come. He was a police officer who had stopped trusting himself, standing in a shelter full of animals who had stopped trusting people, and somehow in that quiet, in that shared stillness, something passed between them. This is not a fast story. It will not rush. It will take you slowly through cold mornings and long afternoons, through doubt and waiting and small, quiet moments that do not feel important till they are. By the end, you will know Nova. You will know Marcus, and you will understand that sometimes, the ones the world calls useless are simply waiting for someone brave enough to see them. Come slowly. There is no hurry here. The shelter woke up the same way every morning. Slowly. With the sound of metal doors, distant barking, and the low hum of fluorescent lights coming to life one by one down the hallway, the staff arrived before sunrise. They moved quietly at first, checking water, refilling bowls, writing notes on clipboards that hung outside each kennel door. Their footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Their voices were low and unhurried in the early hours, before the day asked too much of them. In Kennel 14, a dog named Nova was already awake. She had been awake for a while, actually. She often was. Sleep did not come easily to her in this place, and when it did, it was light and restless, full of sounds she could not quite name, a distant siren, rain on the metal roof, the breathing of other animals in other kennels, all of them lost in their own kind of waiting. Nova sat near the back wall of her kennel, not quite in the corner, but close to it. Close enough to feel something solid behind her. She had learned, in the months she had been here, that solid things at your back felt safer than open space. It was a small comfort, but it was hers. Her kennel card read Nova. Female, approx. 5 years. Mixed breed. One eye non-functional due to prior injury. Temperament, cautious. Not recommended for homes with young children. That last line, that was the one that mattered most to the people who stopped. They would read it, pause, then walk on. Nova did not watch them go. Not anymore. In the early weeks, she had stood at the front of her kennel, nose pressed to the chain-link gate, watching every pair of shoes that passed, hoping. She did not know exactly what she was hoping for. She only knew the feeling, that sharp, quiet pull in her chest when someone slowed down. But the slowing down rarely led to anything, and so, gradually, she had stopped going to the front. She sat near the back wall instead. She watched the door from there. It was the same view, but somehow it felt different. Less like hoping, more like simply being. One of the morning staff, a young woman named Carla, stopped at Kennel 14 as she always did. "Morning, Nova," she said softly. She did not make a big fuss. She did not crouch down dramatically or make high-pitched sounds the way some volunteers did. She simply spoke, quietly, as if she and Nova were two people passing in a hallway. She slid the food bowl in through the small gap at the bottom of the gate. Nova did not move right away. She watched Carla's hands, then Carla's face. Then, slowly, she rose from her spot and walked forward. Not eagerly, carefully. Each step measured. She lowered her head to the bowl and ate. Carla stood there for a moment just watching. "You're a good girl," she said. "You know that?" Nova did not look up. She ate slowly. When she was finished, she lifted her head, looked at Carla with her one clear eye, and then walked back to her spot near the wall. Carla picked up the empty bowl. She made a small note on her clipboard. She moved on to Kennel 15, the hallway filled with the sounds of morning. Dogs barked in other sections. A door banged somewhere far away. A radio turned on in the staff office, playing something low and indistinct. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. Nova settled onto her blanket. Outside her kennel window, a small rectangle of reinforced glass near the ceiling, the sky was beginning to lighten. Not bright, not golden, just a slow fading of dark into gray. She watched it for a while. She had learned to find small things worth watching. The changing sky was one of them. A spider that sometimes appeared in the upper corner of her kennel was another. The way light moved across the concrete floor as the morning stretched forward, that too. These were not dramatic things, but they were hers, and in a place where very little belonged to her, she held on to them quietly. Nova had been at the Millbrook County Animal Shelter for 4 months and 11 days. She did not know this, of course. She did not count days. But the staff did. Carla had written a small mark on the back of the kennel card for each week that passed. There were now 18 marks. 4 months is a long time in a shelter. Long enough that the staff knew your habits. Long enough that they worried about you. In the quiet way shelter workers worry, not with words, but with extra blankets, with lingering glances, with the small hope that today might be different. So far, today was the same as every other day. Nova closed her one good eye. Outside, a car pulled into the shelter parking lot. She could hear it, the sound of tires on gravel, the engine cutting off, a door opening and closing. She did not open her eye. Footsteps on the path outside. She heard them approach. She told herself it did not matter who it was. It probably did not, but somewhere in the quiet of Kennel 14, in that still and careful space between hoping and not hoping, something very small shifted. Like a breath held too long, finally, gently released. The footsteps stopped at the front door. Whoever had come, they had come alone. And they had come early, before the shelter was busy, before the noise of the day had taken over. That meant something, even if Nova could not have said what. The day had barely begun. But it had already begun differently. No one left a note. That is the thing about abandoned animals. They arrive without explanation. A shelter worker finds them at the door, or a stranger calls in a report, or a police officer brings them in from a road somewhere. And all anyone knows is what they can see. What they could see when Nova arrived was this. A female dog, medium build, brindle coat, estimated age between 4 and 6 years. Alert but not aggressive. Underweight but not critically. A healed scar along her left jaw, old enough that the fur had grown back over it, uneven and thin. And her left eye, clouded completely white, no pupil visible, no response to light or movement. The injury to the eye was old. That much was clear. It had not happened recently. Whatever had caused it, and the shelter vet had her guesses, it had happened long ago, and the eye had never been treated properly. It did not cause Nova pain anymore. The vet was sure of that, but it was gone. That part of her vision was simply gone. She had arrived on a Tuesday morning in early February. A couple had found her on the roadside outside of town, 2 miles past the gas station on Route 7, standing in the middle of the shoulder, not moving, not running from cars, just standing. They had pulled over. The woman had gotten out carefully, crouching low, speaking softly. Nova had not run. She had stood still and let the woman approach. That was the first thing people noticed about Nova, and it never changed. She did not run. Even when she was afraid, she did not run. She went still instead. It was as if she had learned, somewhere in her life, that running did not help. The couple had put her in the back seat of their car. She had sat on the seat without making a sound for the entire drive to the shelter. When they arrived, she had stepped out carefully and walked through the shelter doors without being pulled. They had filled out the forms. They did not know her name, her history, where she had come from, or how long she had been on that roadside. They were kind people. The woman had cried a little, but they had a small apartment and 2 cats. They could not keep her. They had named her Nova on the form. A small, spontaneous act of kindness. Maybe they felt she deserved a name before they left her. And then they left. Nova had watched them go. The glass door of the shelter had swung shut behind them, and she had stood very still in the intake area, looking at that door. Then she had looked at the woman behind the desk, then at the hallway ahead of her. Then she had simply waited to see what came next. What came next was Kennel 14. It was not a bad kennel. It was clean. It had a blanket. The floor was cold but dry. The window near the ceiling let in a strip of light that moved and changed throughout the day. Nova had walked the back wall, turned once and sat down. The door had closed behind her, and so began the waiting. In the weeks that followed, the shelter staff tried to learn what they could about her. She was calm with people she recognized. She ate steadily, not frantically. She showed no aggression, not toward other dogs whose sounds filtered through the walls, not toward the staff who entered her kennel for cleaning. She simply watched. Calmly, carefully, with that one clear brown eye that seemed to hold more thought than some people expected. She was placed on the adoption floor after her mandatory intake period. Her kennel card was written. Her photo was taken. The photo was not a great one. She had not looked at the camera. She had been looking at something past it. Something no one else could identify. Her one clouded eye gave her an expression that, in photographs, looked almost unsettling to people who did not know her. The adoption coordinator had tried 3 times to get a better photo. Each time, Nova had booked somewhere else. Quietly, patiently, consistently, somewhere else. In the end, they had used the 3rd photo because it was the least blurry. Her profile went online. 37 people viewed it in the first week. 2 came to meet her. The first was a retired man who had recently lost his dog of 12 years. He had come hoping for comfort. He had stood outside her kennel for several minutes watching her. He had said, softly, "She's beautiful." And he had meant it. But then he had read the card, "Not recommended for homes with young children." He had grandchildren who visited every weekend. He had shaken his head. He had walked on. The second was a woman in her 40s looking for a companion dog. She had opened Nova's kennel door and stepped inside. Nova had stood up from her blanket and approached slowly. They had stood face to face for a moment. Then the woman had bent down and reached for Nova's face, directly toward the clouded eye quickly. Nova had flinched. Not growled. Not snapped. Simply flinched. The woman had stepped back. She had left without saying much. The shelter coordinator had written cautious with fast movements in the notes. And so February had passed, then most of March, and Nova had continued to sit near her back wall, watching the window, watching the light change, watching the door that opened and closed, while the person she was waiting for had not yet arrived. She did not know she was waiting for someone specific. She only knew she was still here, and that some part of her had not yet let go. Sometimes a history is not told in words. It lives in the way a dog flinches at a fast hand, in the way she chooses the corner closest to the wall, in the quiet discipline of an animal who has learned to need very little, because needing less means losing less. But needing less is not the same as wanting nothing. And Nova still wanted something. She was just very patient about it. Marcus Webb had not planned to come to the shelter. That was the honest truth of it. He had been driving. That was all. Just driving, which was something he did on the mornings he could not sleep, which had become most mornings lately. He drove through the town before it woke up, through the empty intersections, past the shuttered storefronts, along the roads that curved out toward the county edges where houses thinned out and fields began. He drove because motion helped, because sitting still in his apartment made the walls feel closer than they were. He was 53 years old. He had been a police officer for 26 of those years. He was good at his job, had been for most of those years. He knew how to read a room, how to stay calm when things escalated, how to be the steadiest person present when everything around him was falling apart. But 4 months ago, something had gone wrong. He did not think about the details if he could help it. The investigation had cleared him. His captain had told him repeatedly that it was not his fault. His partner, a good man named Terry, had said the same thing over a beer one evening, looking Marcus in the eye with complete sincerity. Marcus had nodded. He had said the right things. He had not believed any of it. He was back on duty, desk work, mostly, while he waited for the internal review to fully close. He sat at a desk for 8 hours a day and did paperwork, and people were careful around him in the way people are careful around someone who has been through something. They were kind. They were thoughtful. He found it exhausting. On the morning of the 14th of March, he had been driving for about an hour when he passed the shelter sign, Millbrook County Animal Shelter, open 7 days. He had driven past it many times over the years. He had never stopped. He stopped this time. He was not sure why. It was 6:45 in the morning. The shelter did not open to the public until 9. He knew this because the hours were printed on the sign. but there was a light on inside, and a car in the parking lot, and something made him pull in anyway. He sat in his car for a few minutes. He was not a man who had pets. He had grown up with a dog, a beagle named Fletcher, who had lived to 14 and had been a good, warm, uncomplicated presence in an otherwise complicated household. But since leaving home, Marcus had lived alone and had told himself a pet did not suit his schedule. His hours were irregular. His apartment was small. It was not practical. This was all true. He got out of the car. He walked to the front door and knocked. A young woman appeared. Carla, though he did not know her name yet, and she looked at him with mild surprise. "We don't open until 9, she said through the glass. "I know," Marcus said. "I'm sorry. He paused. "I was just passing." Carla looked at him for a moment. She was a good judge of people. It came with the job. She unlocked the door. "I'm finishing morning rounds," she said. "You can walk with me if you want." Quietly. He followed her inside. The shelter smelled the way shelters smell. Disinfectant and animal and something warm underneath, like the breath of living things in a closed space. It was not unpleasant. It was honest. They walked down the main hallway. Dogs looked up as they passed. Some wagged. Some barked once and then settled. Some watched without moving. Marcus walked slowly. He looked at each kennel card. He did not say much. At Kennel 9, a young yellow Labrador pressed itself against the gate, tail moving furiously, eyes bright with desperate hope. Marcus stopped and let it sniff his fingers through the chain link. "Popular one," Carla said. "He'll be adopted this week, probably." Marcus nodded and moved on. At Kennel 12, a gray-muzzled older dog lay on his side, sleeping heavily. The card said, "Bernard, male, 11 years." Marcus stopped for longer this time. "People don't usually take the older ones," he said quietly. It was not a question. "No," Carla said. "They don't." He moved on. At Kennel 14, he stopped again. The kennel looked quieter than the others, neater somehow, though that may have been his imagination. The blue blanket was folded. The food bowl was clean and set to the side, and in the back, sitting near the wall, was a dog unlike any he had seen in the others. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the window near the ceiling, at the strip of gray morning light that came through it. Her profile was still and composed. Her brindle coat caught the dim light. One eye was clear and dark. The other was clouded, white and quiet like a stone worn smooth by water. He read the card. Nova. Female. Approx. 5 years. Mixed breed. One eye non-functional due to prior injury. Cautious with fast movements. Not recommended for homes with young children. He stood there. Nova did not look at him. She kept watching her window. Marcus stayed at Kennel 14 for 3 full minutes. He did not knock on the gate. He did not make sounds to get her attention. He simply stood and watched her watch the light. When he finally stepped back, Carla was watching him with a quiet, knowing expression. "She's been here 4 months, Carla said. "She doesn't really perform for people." "No," Marcus agreed. "Most people want a dog that looks excited to see them." Marcus looked at the kennel one more time. Nova had shifted slightly, just her head turning, until her one clear eye found him. They looked at each other. It lasted only a moment. Then Nova looked back at her window. Marcus put his hands in his pockets. "I'll come back at 9, he said. He did not know what he was starting. He was not the kind of man who made decisions quickly, not anymore. But something about the way the dog sat near her wall, watching the light with neither hope nor despair, just patient and present and quiet. Something in that felt familiar in a way he could not yet name. He came back at 9, as he said he would. The shelter was different at 9. The parking lot had 2 more cars. A family with children arrived just as Marcus was walking in. A volunteer in a green vest was setting up a small display near the front desk. Photos of adoptable dogs, printed on bright paper with cheerful borders. Marcus walked past the display without stopping. He found Carla at the front desk. "The dog in Kennel 14, he said. "Nova. Can I spend some time with her?" Carla looked at him. That same quiet assessment. "Sure," she said. "I'll take you to the meat room." The meat room was a small space off the main hallway. A few chairs, a rubber mat on the floor, a hook on the wall with leashes hanging from it. It smelled of dog and cleaning solution and, faintly, of the lavender air freshener someone had plugged in near the door. Carla brought Nova in on a lead. Nova walked in calmly. She scanned the room, one slow sweep with her good eye. She noted Marcus. She noted the chairs. She went to the far corner of the mat and sat down. Carla handed Marcus the lead. "Just sit," she said quietly. "Don't push. Let her come to you if she wants." Marcus sat on the floor. He crossed his legs. He held the lead loosely. Nova looked at him. He looked back. Neither of them moved for a long time. Marcus had been in standoffs before. He knew how to be patient in uncomfortable silences. He knew how to occupy space without filling it. He sat and breathed and did not ask anything of her. After about 4 minutes, Nova got up from her corner. She walked slowly across the mat. She stopped 2 feet from him. She lowered her nose and sniffed the floor near his knee. Then she lifted her head and looked at his face. Her good eye moved across his features. He had the odd sense of being read. He did not move. She stepped closer. One more slow step. Then she sniffed his jacket, the sleeve, then the shoulder, then the side of his neck, briefly. Her breath was warm. Her nose was cool. Then she stepped back, 1 step, and sat. They stayed like that for a while, close enough for him to see the details of her clouded eye up close, the way it caught light even though it could not use it, like a pearl, like something that had its own quiet beauty once you let yourself see it that way. He reached out his hand slowly. Palm up, not toward her face. Just open, beside his knee. She looked at the hand, then at his face, then at the hand again. She did not move toward it, but she did not move away from it either. After another minute, she lowered her chin and rested it on his knee. Just that. Just the weight of her head on his knee. Barely 4 pounds of weight, a small, careful gesture that could have been nothing, or could have been everything, depending on who was watching. Marcus looked down at her. He exhaled slowly. When Carla came back 20 minutes later, they were still in the same position. Marcus had not moved. Neither had Nova. "So," Carla said gently, "what are you thinking?" Marcus looked up. "I need to think," he said. Carla nodded. She had heard this before. It often meant no. "I'll leave her card at the front desk," she said. He handed the lead back to her. Nova stood and let herself be led to the door. At the door, she paused. One look back at Marcus with her one clear eye. Then she was gone. He sat on the floor for another moment. Then he got up and walked back out into the hallway. In the main adoption area, the family was still there. The children were pressed against a kennel further down, laughing at a bouncy golden retriever mix who was trying to lick them through the gate. The parents were smiling. The shelter volunteer was telling them about the dog, how young he was, how playful, how good with kids. Marcus walked past. He passed kennel 14. It was empty. Nova had not been brought back yet. He stood at the front desk. The adoption coordinator looked up. Her name tag said Diane. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Of course. The dog in 14, Nova." He paused. "Why hasn't she been adopted?" Diane folded her hands on the desk. "A few reasons," she said. She was direct, which he appreciated. The eye makes people nervous, even though it doesn't affect her health or her temperament. The kennel card says cautious with fast movements, which people read as aggressive, even though it's not, and she doesn't perform. When people come to see her, she doesn't do what they expect a dog to do. "She just sits," Marcus said. "She just sits," Diane agreed, and people interpret that as something being wrong with her. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Is something wrong with her?" Diane looked at him steadily. "No," she said. "She's one of the most emotionally stable animals we have in this building. She's been through something, we don't know what. But she's not broken. She's just—" Diane paused, choosing the word. "Careful?" Marcus nodded slowly. He picked up the kennel card from the desk. He looked at it for a long time. Then he set it back down. "I'll be in touch," he said. He walked out. In the parking lot, he sat in his car without starting it. He thought about what Diane had said. She's not broken. She's just careful. He thought about how those words felt when he turned them inward, applied them somewhere else, let them land on something he'd been trying not to look at for 4 months. He did not start the car for a while. The family adopted the golden retriever mix that morning. His kennel was empty by noon. Down the hall, Nova was brought back to kennel 14. She walked to her spot near the wall. She settled onto her blanket. She watched her window. She did not know that a man was sitting in a parking lot less than 100 yards away, holding her kennel card in his mind if not in his hand. She only knew the light through the window was shifting toward afternoon. She watched it move, march past. The days moved the way days move in a shelter, by routine, by the sound of the same hallway, by the same fluorescent buzz, by the changing quality of light through that small window. Carla came in the morning. She brought food. She said good morning. She moved on. A volunteer named Pete came in the afternoons, 3 days a week. He walked the more adoptable dogs, the ones who needed the exercise, the ones whose energy needed release. He walked Nova too, sometimes. Though she was not high energy, she walked beside him quietly, sniffed the air near the fence, watched the road beyond. She did not pull. She did not drag. She simply walked. Pete often said she was the easiest dog he walked. She was also the one nobody asked about. In the weeks following Marcus's visit, 3 other people came to meet Nova. The first was a middle-aged couple who had seen her photo online. They were kind people, but they came with a list, specific traits they were looking for, written on their phones. Nova did not match enough of them. They thanked the staff politely and left. The second was a young man who came in on a Saturday afternoon, loud and cheerful, the kind of energy that fills a room. He opened the meat room door fast, talked quickly, moved his hands a lot. Nova retreated to the far corner and stayed there. She did not growl. She did not snap. She simply would not come close. The young man left disappointed. The third was an older woman who sat on the floor of the meat room for 15 minutes. She was quiet and patient. Nova had approached her, sniffed her hands, even sat beside her for a while. The woman had gone home to think about it. She had called the next morning to say her landlord would not allow dogs. Carla had written return to waitlist on Nova's file. The days continued. Marcus came back on the first Thursday of April. He had not called ahead. He simply appeared at the front desk, in civilian clothes again, and asked if he could see Nova. Carla showed him to the meat room. This time, Nova came to him faster. Not quickly, not like an eager dog who has been waiting, but faster than before. She crossed the mat in about 2 minutes. She sniffed his sleeve. She sat beside him. He reached out his hand, palm up, the same way he had before. This time, after only a short pause, she touched her nose to his palm. Just once, brief and light. He did not make a sound. They sat together for 40 minutes. When he left, he stopped at the front desk again. "I want to make sure no one else adopts her while I'm deciding," he said. Diane looked at him. "I can put a hold on her for 2 weeks," she said. "After that, the hold expires." 2 weeks, he said. All right, he left. He came back 4 days later, and then 3 days after that. Each visit was quiet, each one a little more comfortable than the last. Nova began to recognize the sound of his footsteps in the hallway, or perhaps his scent, which reached her before he did. On his 4th visit, she was already standing at the front of her kennel when he arrived. Just standing. Not barking. Not wagging wildly. Just standing there, facing the gate. Carla noticed. She did not say anything to Marcus, but she made a note. Marcus always stayed about 40 minutes. He sat on the floor. He spoke to Nova sometimes. Low, quiet sentences about nothing in particular. The weather, the drive over, something he had seen on the road. He spoke the way people speak to someone they are comfortable with, without any pressure for a response. Nova listened. She always listened. She watched his face while he talked, her good eyes steady and attentive. On his 5th visit, she lay down beside him. Not quite touching, just close enough that he could feel the warmth of her against his leg. He sat very still. He did not want to disturb whatever this was. At home, in his apartment, he had begun to think about practical things. Whether dogs were allowed in his building. They were, with a deposit. Whether he had the schedule for it. He would need to adjust some things, but it was possible. Whether he had enough space. She was not a large dog. She would be fine. He was doing what careful people do when they are deciding something they have already half decided. He was looking for reasons it would work. The shelter hold expired in 9 days. He drove home on a Tuesday evening, past the gas station on Route 7, out toward the county edges where the roads went quiet. He drove the way he had been driving for months, just moving, just breathing. But tonight it felt slightly different. Tonight he was thinking about something other than the 4 months behind him. He was thinking about a blue blanket, about one clear eye, about the particular silence of a dog who had decided, carefully, to trust him just a little. He drove home. He did not sleep well, but he did not drive again that night. He sat on his couch instead, in the quiet of his apartment, and thought. Time moves differently for those who wait. For Nova, the days were simply days, not counted, not mourned. She had a blanket. She had her window. She had Carla's voice in the mornings. Now she had something else too. A set of footsteps she recognized, a smell she knew, a warmth that appeared beside her and asked nothing. She had learned not to put too much weight on such things, but she had not yet learned to stop noticing them. No one taught Marcus how to be with Nova. He simply figured it out, the way you figure out most things that matter, through attention, through patience, through the willingness to be wrong and try again. He learned early that she did not like sudden sounds. If a door banged, she went still, not frightened, exactly, but alert in a way that took a few minutes to settle. He began opening doors quietly without thinking about it, just adjusting. He learned that she was more comfortable when he sat on the floor than when he stood over her. So he sat on the floor. Every visit. He learned that she liked the right side of his jacket, specifically the right sleeve, and would sniff it for a long time when he arrived. He started putting his arm out when he walked in, letting her take her time. These were small things, but small things, done consistently, are how trust is built. He was not thinking of it as trust building. He was not thinking in those terms. He was simply paying attention to a dog and adjusting himself accordingly. This is what he had always been good at. Before everything went wrong, he had been very good at reading the room, at being the calmest person in a complicated situation. He had just stopped believing that about himself. With Nova, he did not have to believe anything. He just had to show up and be quiet. She met him there. On his 6th visit, he brought a soft rubber ball from a pet store. He set it on the mat between them without fanfare. She sniffed it, pushed it gently with her nose, looked at him. He did not make it into a game. He just left it there. By the end of the visit, she was holding it lightly in her mouth, lying beside him. He smiled. It was the first real smile he had managed in a while. It came without effort. It came before he had decided to smile. On his 7th visit, one of the shelter's veterinarians, Dr. Reyes, stopped in to check on Nova. She was a calm, straightforward woman who did not have a lot of time, but always used the time she had well. She looked at Nova lying beside Marcus on the floor. She doesn't do that with most people, she said. I know, Marcus said. Do you have any questions about her eye, her health? Marcus had a list. He had been doing research. He asked his questions clearly and listened carefully to the answers. Dr. Reyes answered each one directly. The clouded eye was completely non-functional. Nova had no vision in it, but it caused no pain, required no treatment. Her overall health was good. She was a little thin, but eating well. Her temperament was excellent. She's a profoundly calm animal, Dr. Reyes said, which is remarkable given that we don't know what her life was before. Marcus looked at Nova. Remarkable, he repeated quietly. That evening, he called his building manager about the pet deposit. He called his captain the next day, not about the dog, but to ask about his schedule going forward. He wanted to know if the desk assignment was permanent or transitional. His captain said transitional, probably another 2 months before Marcus returned to his full duties. 2 months. He would be home more. His hours would be more regular. He called the shelter on a Thursday afternoon and asked Diane to extend the hold by 1 more week. Diane said she would, but gently reminded him that Nova had been waiting for a long time, not as pressure, just as information. He understood. That evening he sat in his apartment and looked at the space around him. It was a tidy space, functional, quiet. He had a couch, a chair, a table, a window that looked out over the building parking lot. Everything was in order. It was also very empty. He had not thought of it as empty before. He had thought of it as efficient, as practical. He sat there for a long time. He thought about what Diane had said weeks ago. She's not broken. She's just careful. He thought about what it meant to be careful. To have learned caution not from weakness, but from experience. To still be willing, despite everything. To put your chin on someone's knee and rest it there. He thought about what that took. He went to bed that night and slept better than he had in months. Not well, but better. In the morning, he got up. He made coffee. He stood at his window and watched the parking lot fill slowly as the building woke up. Then he picked up his keys. Carla arrived at the shelter that morning at her usual time. She did the usual rounds. She filled the food bowls. She said good morning to each kennel in turn. When she got to kennel 14, she stalked. Nova was already at the gate, standing quietly, facing out into the hallway. "You know something I don't?" Carla said softly. Nova did not answer, but she did not go back to the wall either. He walked in at 8:47 in the morning. Diane was not at the desk yet, it was still early. Carla was the one who looked up when he came in. "I want to adopt her," he said. "Nova." He said it clearly and without preamble, the way he said things when he had made up his mind completely. Carla looked at him for a moment. "Okay," she said. "Just okay. Not a big reaction, not a celebration." She said it quietly, the way the situation deserved. The way people respond to something that has been a long time coming. She pulled the paperwork. He sat at a small table near the front window and filled it out. The forms were not complicated. Name, address, contact information, questions about his living situation, his work schedule, his experience with animals. He answered each one carefully. He wrote neatly. He did not rush. While he was writing, Carla went down the hallway. He heard the familiar sound of Kennel 14 opening. He heard footsteps, carless, and then quieter ones. Paw steps on concrete. Then the door to the front area opened. He looked up. Nova walked in on the lead. She scanned the room the way she always did, that one slow sweep. She found him at the table. She walked toward him, not running, not frantically. Just a steady, unhurried walk across the room, as if she had decided where she was going and there was no need to hurry. She stopped beside his chair. He put his hand down, palm open. She sniffed it. Then she pressed her nose into his palm for a moment, not just a brief touch, but a real press, firm and warm. Then she sat. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked back at his paperwork and finished filling it out. Diane arrived at 9 and went through the adoption checklist with him. She explained the 2-week adjustment period. She told him what to expect, that Nova might be quiet at first in the new environment, might take time to settle, might have moments of uncertainty. "She'll need patience," Diane said. "I've got that," Marcus said. He paid the adoption fee. He signed the papers. Carla had packed a small bag, Nova's blue blanket, her food bowl, a week's worth of the food she had been eating at the shelter so the transition would be gentle on her stomach. She handed it to Marcus. He took it. He clipped the new leash she had brought, a plain black lead, to Nova's collar. They walked out together. In the parking lot, Nova stopped at the edge of the pavement. She looked at the car. Then she looked at the road. Then she looked at him. He opened the back door of his car. She considered it for a moment. Then she stepped forward and jumped in. One clean, careful movement. He closed the door gently. He put the bag on the front seat. He got in. For a moment, he sat without starting the car. He looked in the rearview mirror. Nova was looking back at him. Her one clear eye steady. Her breathing calm. She was sitting up straight, taking in the smell of the car, the new space, the beginning of something she did not yet have words for. Though of course she had no words at all. Only the bone-deep knowledge that something had changed. Something had finally, quietly changed. He started the car. He drove out of the shelter parking lot and onto the road. Neither of them looked back. Carla stood at the shelter window for a moment after they left. She watched the car turn out of the lot and disappear down the road. Then she went back inside. She pulled the kennel card from Kennel 14. She crossed out Nova's entry in the waiting log. She wrote the date. She held the card for a second. Then she set it in the completed file, the one they kept, the one nobody usually looked at, but that held, quietly, the record of every animal that had finally found their way home. The apartment smelled nothing like the shelter. That was the first thing Nova noticed. There was no disinfectant, no concentrated animal smell, no hum of fluorescent lights. There was coffee, faintly, something clean, laundry maybe, a window scent, the particular smell of a space that has been lived in by one person for a long time. She stood in the center of the living room and processed it all. Marcus did not try to guide her. He set his keys on the counter, set the bag down by the door, and then went to the couch and sat. He left the room to her. She walked slowly. She sniffed the baseboards, the legs of the couch, the corner near the television. She went to the window and stood with her nose near the glass for a while. Outside, the parking lot. A tree, a bird she could hear but not quite see. She walked down the short hallway, found the bedroom, went inside, scanned it, came back out. She walked to the kitchen, sniffed the floor near the refrigerator. Then she came back to the living room. She stood and looked at Marcus. He was watching her quietly. She walked to the couch. She sniffed the cushion. Then she jumped up, carefully, checking his reaction first, and lay down at the far end. He did not move her. She put her chin on the armrest and looked at the window. That was how the first hour went. There were hard moments in those early days. Nova was used to the rhythms of the shelter, the particular timing of meals, the specific sounds of morning, the constant ambient presence of other animals she could hear even if she could not see them. The apartment was very quiet by comparison. On the first night, she woke at 2 in the morning. She stood in the middle of the living room and was very still for a long time. Marcus heard her. He was a light sleeper and came out from the bedroom. He did not turn on the lights. He simply sat on the floor. After a few minutes, she came and lay beside him. He sat with her until she settled. Then he went back to bed. She moved to the bedroom doorway and slept there for the rest of the night. By the third day, she was sleeping beside the bed rather than in the doorway. By the end of the first week, she had mapped the entire apartment. She knew every corner, every sound, every smell. She knew the sound of his alarm, the routine of his morning, the exact moment he would pick up her food bowl to fill it. She was not demonstrative about any of this. She did not jump or bark or perform excitement. But her body language had changed in ways that Carla, had she seen it, would have recognized immediately. Her shoulders were lower. Her breathing was slower. She moved through the apartment with a looseness she had not had in the shelter. Marcus noticed these things. He noticed them the way he noticed everything, quietly, without making a fuss of them. He bought her a proper dog bed, a thick, cushioned one in a dark gray that matched the couch. He put it near the window in the living room, where she could see the parking lot and the tree and the bird she had found on the first day. She used the bed at night. During the day, she preferred the couch. He let her. He had started walking her twice a day, morning and late afternoon, the same route through the neighborhood. She walked beside him without a lot of drama. She sniffed at the base of every tree they passed. She watched other dogs from a careful distance. Not hostile, just thoughtful. She noticed everything. On their 5th morning walk, they passed an older man sitting on his front steps with a cup of coffee. He looked at Nova. "What happened to her eye?" he asked Marcus. Not unkindly, just curious. "Old injury," Marcus said. "Doesn't bother her." The man nodded. He looked at Nova more carefully. "She's a good-looking dog," he said. Nova was not looking at the man. She was looking at the flower bed beside his steps, something there had caught her nose. Marcus smiled. "She is," he agreed. He had not thought of her that way before. Good-looking, but standing there on that sidewalk in the morning light, watching her investigate the flower bed with focused attention, one ear up, her brindle coat warm in the early sun, her good eye intent. She was beautiful in a way that took patience to see, like most beautiful things. At night, Marcus sat on the couch and read or watched something low-key on television. Nova lay beside him, close but not quite touching. Sometimes she would put her chin on his thigh, the way she had the first time in the shelter meat room. He would rest his hand on her back without making anything of it. They had found a rhythm. It was quiet and ordinary and genuinely, deeply enough. Adjustment takes the time it takes. It cannot be hurried by kindness, only supported by it. Nova did not become a different dog in Marcus's apartment. She became more fully herself. The things she had kept small in the shelter slowly taking up appropriate space. Her quiet grew warmer. Her stillness grew more restful than resigned. Something that had been held tightly in her for a long time was beginning, slowly, to release. It was a Wednesday in June. Marcus had started his reduced field duty the week before. Nothing high risk, just ride-alongs and support shifts, easing back in. He was sleeping better. He was eating regularly. He was, by most measures, beginning to find his footing again. That night, he and Nova went on their late walk at 9:30. The neighborhood was quiet. The summer air was warm and a little humid. There was the smell of someone's barbecue from earlier in the evening, still faint in the air. Nova walked beside him, her nose working steadily. They went the usual route. Around the block, past the older man's house, past the community garden, down to the end of the street where the neighborhood met the edge of a small parking lot that served a row of businesses, all closed at this hour. They had turned to head back when Nova stopped. She did not just pause, she stopped with a different quality. She planted all 4 feet and went very still. Her good eye was fixed on something at the far edge of the parking lot, near a chain-link fence. Marcus looked. He could not see anything at first, just shadows. Then he heard it, a low sound, not quite a voice. Something between a groan and a breath. He looked at Nova. She was pulling forward now, slowly, not frantically. A steady, directed pull toward the fence. He followed her lead. As they got closer, he saw it. A man was slumped against the base of the fence. Older man, 60s maybe, heavy set. He was sitting with his legs out in front of him, his head dropped forward, his hand pressed to his chest. His face was gray in the streetlight. Marcus's training came back without effort. That was the thing about training. It did not ask for belief or confidence. It simply activated. He told the man he was there. He pulled out his phone and called emergency services. He checked the man's pulse, present but faint. He spoke to the dispatcher with his full name and exact location. He loosened the man's collar. He stayed calm and spoke clearly. Nova sat beside him throughout. She did not bark. She did not get in the way. She sat close to Marcus's left side, pressed gently against his leg, and she was completely still. The emergency operator kept him on the line. The man was conscious, but barely. Marcus talked to him, quietly, steadily, the way he had learned to talk to people in crisis, present, unhurried, certain. "You're all right," he said. "Help is coming. You are not alone." It was 5 minutes before the ambulance arrived. 5 minutes is a very short time and a very long time simultaneously, depending on where you are standing. Marcus was present for all of it. When the paramedics arrived, they were efficient and calm. They assessed the man quickly. Cardiac event. Serious but survivable with fast intervention. They got him on the stretcher. One of the paramedics looked at Marcus. "You stay with him?" she asked. "Until you got here," Marcus said. "Good call," she said. She looked at Nova. "And her?" "She found him," Marcus said. The paramedic looked at Nova for a moment. Nova looked back. The paramedic nodded once, then turned back to her patient. The ambulance left. Marcus stood in the parking lot. The night was quiet again. The streetlights reflected in the wet pavement. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and went quiet. He looked down at Nova. She was looking up at him. Her one clear eye was steady and dark, catching the yellow light. He crouched down. He put both his hands on her face, gently, and looked at her directly. At her good eye, at her clouded eye, at the whole of her face that the world had decided was too much trouble, too uncertain, too difficult. "Good girl," he said softly. That was all. But his voice held everything. A voice can hold when it is very quiet and very full. Nova pressed her forehead briefly against his. Just a moment of contact, warm and still. Then she straightened and looked back toward the road. Ready, it seemed, to walk home. The man in the parking lot survived. His name was Robert Hale. He was 67 years old, a retired schoolteacher who lived 3 blocks from Marcus. He had no idea, as the paramedics worked on him, that the one who had found him in the dark was a one-eyed dog who had spent 4 months in a shelter being passed over by everyone who came through the door. He would find out later. When he did, he would not say much. He would just sit quietly with that information for a while. Some things do not need a lot of words. Summer came slowly that year, the way good things do. Marcus went back to full duty in late July. It was different than it had been before. Not easier, exactly, but more grounded. He moved through his days with something solid underneath him that had not been there in the months before. His partner Terry noticed. "You seem better," Terry said one afternoon, not making a big deal of it. "I am," Marcus said. And it was true without complication. Nova was at home during his shifts, which he had arranged carefully. A neighbor, a retired woman named Gloria who lived 2 floors below, had agreed to walk her midday. Gloria had met Nova in the elevator one morning and had crouched down immediately and spoken to her in the soft, unhurried way that Nova responded to. Nova had let Gloria pet her behind the ears. That was the test. That was always the test. Gloria walked her at noon Monday through Friday. She texted Marcus a photo most days, Nova beside the flower bed, Nova on the sidewalk looking at something off-frame, Nova sitting in front of the community garden with the afternoon light behind her. Marcus saved everyone. He did not think too much about the parking lot night. In the weeks that followed, he thought about it sometimes, replayed it in the way you replay things that could have gone differently. Robert Hale had recovered. He had come home from the hospital after 4 days. He had sent a card to the shelter. He had found Millbrook County Animal Shelter's address somehow, thanking them for the animals they cared for. He had not known how to find Marcus directly. Marcus had read about the card from Carla, who had texted him. He had not needed the acknowledgement. He was glad the man was all right. That was enough. In August, Carla visited. She had asked if she could, and he had said yes. She brought a small bag of Nova's favorite treats from the shelter, the one she had refused to eat unless Carla put them near her by hand back in the early weeks. She came on a Saturday morning. When Carla walked in, Nova raised her head from the dog bed. She looked at Carla. Then she stood up and walked to her, not frantically but without hesitation. She sniffed Carla's hands, her bag, her jacket. Then she pressed her nose against Carla's knee for a moment. Carla crouched down. "Hi there," she said softly. "Look at you." She looked up at Marcus. "She's different," she said. "Different how?" Carla considered. "She takes up more space," she said finally. "Not literally. Just she's more herself, somehow." Marcus nodded. He understood exactly what she meant. They had coffee. They talked easily for an hour. About the shelter, about Nova's early weeks, about the family that had adopted the golden retriever the same morning Marcus first came in. "He ended up being a lot of work," Carla said. "I think they got more than they expected." Marcus looked at Nova on the couch. "She has never been more than I expected," he said. "No? She's always been exactly what she is." Carla smiled. After she left, Marcus took Nova on a long walk, longer than usual. They went past the usual neighborhood, out to a trail that ran along the edge of a small stream. Nova walked beside him in the way she always did, steady, attentive, nose working, one ear up and one relaxed. She found a stick near the water's edge and carried it for a while. He had not known she liked sticks. She had never had a stick before, not that he had seen. But she carried it with a kind of satisfaction that was very clear and very simple. He watched her and felt something that did not have a precise name. It was somewhere between gratitude and wonder, and a particular tenderness that you develop for things that have been through difficulty and arrived somehow, at peace. They walked until the afternoon cooled. On the way home, they passed the older man's house. He was on his steps again with his coffee, even though it was late afternoon now. He looked at Nova. "She looks good," he said. "She does," Marcus agreed. He did. They all did, in the way that things look when they are exactly where they are meant to be. That evening, Marcus sat on the couch. Nova lay beside him, her head in his lap, her clouded eye facing up toward the ceiling, her good eye half open and drowsy. The television was on low, something he was not really watching. Outside, the summer evening was long and gentle. He thought about everything that had led here. The nights he could not sleep. The parking lot he could not stop replaying. The shelter parking lot where he had sat in his car for 20 minutes before driving home. The 5 visits that became 6. The hold that almost expired. The morning he had walked in and said, "I want to adopt her," and Carla had simply said, "Okay." He thought about what it cost to be careful, the discipline of it, the patience. He looked at Nova. She was asleep now, her breathing deep and slow, her brindle coat rising and falling. One paw had slipped off the cushion, hanging just above the floor, unconcerned. She was not broken, Diane had said. She was just careful. He understood now what he had not fully understood then. That careful is not the same as closed. That waiting is not the same as giving up. That the things worth trusting are the ones that show you slowly, over time, through small and consistent action, that they will not ask more of you than you have to give. He had shown her that. She had shown him the same. Outside, the evening birds were quieting. The street was settling toward night. The apartment held the warm, particular silence of a space that has been lived in and is glad of it. Nova shifted in her sleep, moved closer. Her warm weight settled against him, solid and real and entirely present. He put his hand gently on her back. He sat there for a long time, in the quiet, in the summer evening, in the ordinary grace of belonging to something and having something belong to you. He did not need it to be more than this. This was enough. This was, without question, enough. Some things are not chosen quickly. Some things are chosen slowly, carefully, with full knowledge of what it costs and full willingness to pay it. A one-eyed dog in kennel 14. A man who stopped trusting himself. Two careful creatures who found, in each other, exactly the right reason to try again. She had waited for him without knowing his name. He had found her without knowing what he was looking for. And now, here, in the quiet of an ordinary evening, they had both arrived at the same place. Safe. Known. Home. If this story moved you, if something in it felt familiar, or true, or quietly important, then you already understand what it was really about. It was not just about a dog. It was about the ones who wait. The ones who are passed over. The ones who are called difficult, or broken, or not worth the trouble. The ones who keep something in them alive, quietly, stubbornly, with a patience most of us cannot imagine. They are everywhere. In shelters, yes, but also in the world. And sometimes the best thing we can do is simply stop, look, and choose not to walk past. If you know someone who might need this story today, who might need a reminder that being overlooked is not the same as being without value, please share it with them. And if this kind of quiet storytelling is something you want more of, we would be grateful to have you stay.